We've already done a video on One Tree Champion who we barely ever see any longer, but unlike Maokai, Ivern Support is something that could truly shake up the support role as we know it. Aside from giving huge advantages to your jungler and ADC in the early game, and having great scaling into the mid and late game, this is one of the off-meta supports I've analyzed so far where I've seen a champion have the potential to completely tilt the enemy team into AFKing before 15-minute surrenders. And like other Ivern Support videos that I've seen, the person we're analyzing today actually brings Smite, which we've seen on other supports in Season 12 can be completely game-breaking. To top all of this off, the person who has made this strategy work in high elo is not only the previous #1 Ivern in the world, but also holds the elusive title of reaching rank 1 on the EU West server with it. The player we're analyzing today is known as Styly, former semi-pro, rank 1, streamer, and self-proclaimed Ivern god who has piloted the plan into the support role and once again back into Europe West's high elo. Styly has a long history with League. I already told you that at one point in his career he had reached rank 1 in the jungle, mainly playing Ivern, and that was in Season 9. But he's been playing the game pretty much from the very beginning, reaching Challenger for the first time in Season 4. It wouldn't be until Season 6 when he was finally old enough to be picked up by his first semi-pro League of Legends team as the starting jungler. Styly would continue to bounce around between semi-pro teams until he was offered to become a streamer for Fnatic. He would then continue to stream his top-tier Ivern gameplay and other jungles he was proficient with to hundreds of viewers according to Twitch Tracker. It wasn't until January of 2021 that Styly not only left Fnatic as a streamer, but also retired from pro play and looked to have quit League altogether, or at least not take it as seriously anymore. He would play the game on and off to mess around and hit Grandmaster and then go on a long break again. It wasn't until this season that he has returned fully, but instead of bringing his signature champion Ivern to the jungle, he has decided to bring him into the support role. And honestly, he's had some pretty crazy success, maintaining an over 56% win rate with over 130 games on the champ to where he currently sits at Master 400 LP and where he continues to climb higher and higher to this day. Quick side note here guys, Styly seems like a really nice dude, so by the off chance that he sees this video, shoot him some love in the comments and let's see if we can get him back to streaming again so we can see this crazy pick live. Before we can sing Ivern Support's good graces from the treetops, we first have to talk about why most people leave this pick alone. For one, Ivern has a passive that literally is made for him to be a jungler, so if you want to fully utilize his kit, you're gonna have to bring Smite. Also, Ivern has a pretty weak early game, which if you weren't playing this style I'm about to show you could mean a very difficult and grueling laning phase. Playing this Ivern build is going to take extreme buy-in from your ADC and team, which we all know can be pretty difficult to get in solo queue. And finally, and most importantly, oh gosh, was there a fourth thing? Never mind, I guess I'm stumped. But even with all of these potential problems, Styly has found a way to make it work. Already in the first second of the game, this build gets wacky as Styly purchases either an Ember Knife or a Hail Blade and a refillable potion. It doesn't matter which one he purchases because he's not going to keep it long enough for it to evolve. His goal is to steal an enemy jungle camp, and there are several ways to get there. The most common way he tries for is with an invade. Ivern has a pretty strong catch ability early and throughout the game with his Q or root collar, which can snare a single target for up to 2 seconds at max level. Before every game, he informs and instructs his team of his plan, so most of the time they will participate in the invade. The most ideal situation is that he lands a Q and him and his team find a pick. From there, the enemy team will typically go for the opposite buff, assuming both jungles will then vertical jungle, but they won't. While Styly takes the camp that the opponent isn't, his jungle will be taking their first buff camp, effectively leaving the enemy jungler down a whole buff camp, which can be devastating this early. This is why he has to purchase a Smite item first, because without it, he won't get the EXP necessary from this one camp to hit level 2. After hitting level 2, he'll head to either top or mid lane to attempt an early gank to push one of these lanes ahead as well. Sometimes he'll just chunk someone heavily, but many other times he'll also get an early kill. So now in just the first 2 minutes of the game, he has not only broken the mental of the enemy jungler, but also one of the enemy solo laners as well. And it only gets crazier from here. Let's say the invade goes sour though, or doesn't work, mark and the enemy team is ready. That doesn't really deter him. He'll either ward one of the enemy buffs during the early kerfuffle and then go steal the one the jungler is not doing. With wiser teams, they may have their laners stay behind to watch the buff, and this is why he mostly steals the top side buff, because top laners are unwilling to lose any EXP or CS from lane and will normally leave the buff earlier, allowing him an easy time to steal it. Sometimes the enemy still will wait for him at the buff for very long though, and if that's the case, he'll simply steal a minor backup camp like Raptors because it will still give him level 2 and set the enemy jungler somewhat behind. As long as he can channel his passive for 2.5 seconds without taking damage, he can quickly nab a camp, get out, and look for that early game gank. After completing his gank, he'll either walk to bot lane if he's healthy and his attempted gank was in mid, or if he ganked top, take a back instead. If he heads back, he'll purchase a control ward but still hold on to his smite item for now. After heading bot lane to his ADC, who at this point should have been able to stay within EXP range at the very least and is now at a level advantage alongside Styly, who is also level 2. They can use this advantage to regain lane control and at the very least force some summoner spells, if not a kill. If he's blue side, most junglers prefer to skip Krugs altogether for faster pathing, so Styly will regularly leave lane to use his passive and smite on Krugs to get more bonus EXP and bonus gold. Even if the jungler does do Krugs, they'll normally leave behind 1 or 2, and if that's the case, he can still use Ivern's passive on them to release them for completely free. Then things calm down a bit and he gets to lane for about 1 more minute before he starts to head to river around the 3-minute mark in preparation to take bottom Scuttle Crab. If his jungler is there, he'll instead let him or her have it, but if his jungler is topside, he won't hesitate to secure it for his team with his passive and smite. This Scuttle timing also works well for him to look for an additional roam, either heading mid alone or with his jungler to try again to force an advantage for his mid lane. After taking Scuttle and attempting that mid gank, he will head back to base and now sell his smite item and replace it for a Spell Thief's Edge to start stacking that. From here, it's a waiting game for a while, and while actually in lane with his ADC for this short period of time, he wants to play pretty safe. Again, Ivern is not the strongest champion early, so he mostly plays like an immobile caster, takes Krugs if he's bot side when they're available, or even takes Gromp red side if his jungler is sticking top side or suspects that the enemy jungler will try to go for a steal. To help mitigate enemies from capitalizing on Ivern's early game weakness, he can use his W or Brush Maker to become untargetable under his turret for attempted dives. There are also other great uses throughout the game for using this ability, like sneaking your jungler into your lane or blocking sight when doing an objective like Dragon, and if you have a Rengar with your team, you're just gonna have a great time overall. An underappreciated tool as well for Ivern support is using his W to gain sight of areas in Fog of War to ensure they're safe or to check for wards, or maybe even net a kill. After hanging out in bottom lane for a few more minutes, he then looks for more roams from level 4 to 5 towards middle or top. If during this roam he's able to successfully kill or push out a solo laner, then he knows the first buff he took should be up again at almost exactly 6 minutes and 30 seconds, so he can once again deprive the enemy jungler of another buff camp. At level 5, Ivern also gains a new power where when a buff camp is killed near him, it will spawn an additional copy of that buff for an ally or him to pick up. With all this counter jungling, this means that many times during the game, 2 or even 3 ally champions on Styly's team will have double buffs, including himself. If he's able to secure that buff, he'll normally look for yet another roam before heading back to bottom lane once again. At this point, it's basically mid-game for Ivern support, where you can now choose to continue roaming or help out your over-leveled ADC in the bot lane. After being away for a while, he can even sometimes get some surprise ganks, quote-unquote, on his own lane too. He still looks for Scuttle Crabs and allied jungle camps to take when available, but there's a fine balance here. You don't want to go tilting your jungler from taking all his camps. Styly normally takes minor camps like Gromp when it looks like his jungler won't be back on that side of the map for a while, or like earlier if he thinks he's about to be invaded. But on the contrary, he typically will allow his jungler to take their own buff camps in the early and mid game. At the same time, he also makes sure he's present when those buffs are being taken, so that way he can take an extra buff as well. You're really looking to both drown the enemy jungle and drown enemy solo laners as much as possible to try to accelerate the game. Having a second smite on his team also helps with that objective motive of accelerating the game faster by helping out his jungler secure both Dragon and Rift Heralds when they spawn. With 2 Smites on his team, 1 evolved and 1 not, that means with good communication, him and his jungler can smite a contested buff at 1350 HP and never lose a 50-50. More commonly though, he just uses his smite to speed up the killing process. And he's not afraid to use his smite. It is one of your summoner spells, so he's trying to get value out of it. If they're on an invade and maybe he has another ally with him, he's still using his passive and smite to take those buff camps because he is trying to accelerate his own gameplay. Ivern's ultimate, Daisy, can also help to more safely take objectives by zoning out enemies or tanking damage, help to dive a turret, or simply scout out areas and assist on your quest to find picks and stay safe. Daisy also has some combos that you can utilize by landing your other abilities to impair the enemy's movement and allow her to land her empowered AoE knockup auto attack that can completely devastate a team fight. Daisy is a force to be reckoned with in team fights because she can fill multiple roles. Your team fight potential goes up exponentially with her alive, so try to fight around her cooldown. Styly's role as Ivern is to play towards the back of team fights like a normal enchanter while sending Daisy in to wreak havoc. If the enemy focus on her, he's not too worried about pulling her out or trying to save her because shields are better spent on his allies for peeling, and if Daisy is dying, that means the other team is wasting DPS on her, which is good. Ivern is very good at peeling in team fights, so standing by his backline normally has the best results. If he needs even more help peeling, then he can pull Daisy back to help as well. Regardless, if he's able to stay alive and safe throughout the team fight, that normally means an easy win. After winning a scrap or team fight, he is always looking at the enemy jungle to see if there's any additional camps he can take. He's really trying to sap away any opportunity they have to catch up on EXP. For his build, he starts every game with an Ember Knife or a Hail Blade and a refillable potion. From there, he will perform his invade strats and once again take the first Scuttle, will back to base and sell his Smite item for a Spell Thief's Edge. Next, he'll rush his level 2 boots, pretty much only ever getting Boots of Lucidity for better CDR. He may potentially buy a Dark Seal here as well if he's performing well. He'll then build into his mythic item, either purchasing Shirelias in the majority of his games or Moonstone Renewer if he's fallen behind. For his 4th item will either upgrade to a Magi's if he's snowballing, grab a Knight's Vow against most teams, or build towards a Chemtech Putrefier against healing heavy teams. For his 5th item, whatever he didn't purchase 4th and slots in well here, he will typically buy next. If the game goes long or he needs some more oomph in his build, he'll buy an Elixir of Iron. And throughout the game, like a good support does, he's buying control wards and maybe a Wardstone if the game goes very late. For his runes, he runs Summon Airy for better shields and poke, Mana Flow Ban, Transcendence, and Water Walking for more efficient roams. He brings a Resolve secondary page with Font of Life as well as Revitalize for stronger shields. For his flex runes, he takes 1 ability haste, 1 adaptive force, and 1 scaling health rune as it scales better into the mid and late game. Ivern Support works well with ADCs who can capitalize on his CC like Caitlyn or Jhin, or ADCs who just like to farm in the early game and stay safe like Ezreal or Jinx. Ivern Support struggles against hook supports like Blitz or Nautilus, or champions that can dive his ADC easily under turret while he's away like Elise or Volibear. Thanks y'all for checking out this video. If you liked this video, I heavily suggest you go check out our last off-meta support analysis, which was on Kennen support. See you guys next time. Peace.